Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe's Chop Shop. On the last episode you saw me get 2 junkyard motors, so today I'm going to find out if they're any good or if they're complete garbage. So I've just done the compression test on the Daihatsu, and we got 190 on the front one, 180 on the next one, 175 on the third, and 180 on the fourth. So they're all within 10% of each other, which is perfect. So as far as I can tell, this engine seems reasonably healthy. As long as there's no spun bearings or anything like that, it should be good to go. So I said in the last episode this engine was missing a coil pack, so we're still going to look for one of those. And then this whole subframe should bolt into the Seor from the bottom and replace all the engine mounts in that car, and the gearbox and the engine, and the wiring should be reasonably plug and play as well. So moving on to the 7K from the Town Ace, I've taken the spark plugs out. The front one was so tight I had to use the jack handle off of the trolley jack to leverage the ratchet to get that one out, but I was just really careful so I didn't snap anything, so it's all good. And then the next 3, they were all reasonably easy. So then I come around here, put some WD-40 in all of the cylinders of both of these engines, just to make sure. Bit of lubrication, and then chuck the bell housing back on, put the starter motor back in, and it wouldn't crank over. So after turning it over by hand with a small ratchet, that's not the issue. So I went onto the starter motor, and that is absolutely cactus. So when you're testing a starter motor, I normally just get a battery and some jumper cables and run the earth to the body of the starter motor and the positive to the nut where the wire for the car normally goes. And then in here there's a small spade bit terminal, as you can see there. So you have to jump between that spade bit and where this nut is. So you've got to have full power here, constant power here, and then the earth on the body, and then you just have a wire that goes from there and touch it onto that spade bit, and that'll make the starter motor activate. Alright, so you can see I've got the earth on the body of the starter motor, the positive on that nut, and then I'm just going to use this wire, which is also on that nut positive, and touch it onto that spade bit in there. And absolutely nothing happens. But this starter motor, probably just the solenoid, is knackered, so this gear here normally springs out, hits your flywheel, starts the engine, and then tucks back in. But you could hear it before, it was trying to touch the flywheel, it was coming out and going back in again, but it didn't have the actual turn, so it's not engaging correctly. But as you can see on the bench test here, absolutely nothing. So I won't be compression testing the 7K today, but I've got another starter motor at Mum's house, so I'll pop past there next time I'm in the area, grab that, and then I'll compression test it. So yesterday when I was saying I got the wiring loom for the Daihatsu, we got everything under the dash and under the engine bay as well, under the bonnet. The horn, the windscreen washer bottle, the indicator, and this side is the key, I believe. Coming down we got the relay assistant door control, and then all the switches off the dashboard. We got the steering lock and key. Got one of the fuse boxes there. Coming back through, we got another indicator. There's the immobilizer. And then coming back around here, we've got the ECU, which is just before it goes into the engine bay. And then that side, that pink grommet you can see, that's headlights, so that comes down to here. And then ECU, the engine bay fuse box, and then all the wiring into the engine bay. So we got pretty much everything. Sounds like most of this will be plug and play, but we'll probably end up deleting a lot of it and keeping some of the Seor stuff, so that we don't have to change all the body wiring. Just can change the engine harness and the engine management and anything that runs the engine. So should be reasonably easy. And we got the other dash as well, so we'll try and chuck that in while we're at it. Who knows if it's ready to start with as well. So it's a couple of days later. We moved the Daihatsu K3 engine into the back of the shed. So now when we are ready, we can lay all the wiring out and dive into thinning that out and do any preventive maintenance on the engine that we want to do. So we'll probably end up doing a water pump and maybe a timing belt and that sort of stuff. And then probably end up doing a clutch. And then we want to make a turbo manifold for it because it's kind of silly just doing a 4-cylinder swap. So I've got the 2 old CT12As off the crown. So I've got some new high flowed ones for the crown. So these old ones will be fine for this Daihatsu. So I'm just going to run one of those obviously. So they're originally off of a 2.5 litre and there was 2 of them. This is a 1.3 litre, so we'll just put one of them on there. Should be about right. Probably a little bit small if anything. But we're not going to try and make a powerhouse, we're just trying to make something that should be really fun for Em to drive and me to drive if she lets me. So we got this, and we'll make a manifold for that at some point down the track. That's why I grabbed the exhaust manifold off of this, so I can copy the flange or cut it and use that flange, but I'll probably make a new one from scratch. So I also said I couldn't compression test the 7K without a new starter motor. So I ran to Mum's yesterday and grabbed the new starter motor, which is over there somewhere. And last night I compression tested the 7K, so we've got 155 on cylinder 4, 175 on cylinder 3, 170 on 2, and 165 on cylinder 1. So reasonably healthy. It's not perfect, but it's reasonably good. So now I've done that, I've stripped the bell housing off and the starter motor, which I need to keep for my other car, and I'll try and sell this package. So it's got all the wiring still and it's all ready to go. So I'll try and advertise that and get it sold. So I finally got around to emptying the trailer. Here's our score from the road trip last week. So we've got the C30 dually diff, and that's the hub that goes on this side. So comparing that to this one, looks the same in the center. It's probably different, but looking at it from here, it's fine. Come around here. So comparing the two hubs, that is the dual rear wheel, and that is the single rear wheel. So you can see the difference here. That taper is quite a lot longer on this one, and that hub section is a lot longer than the studs, unlike on the single down here. The reason I gave up on the gantry crane the other week is the engine crane spacer I made actually failed, which I'm not at all surprised about. You can see here I switched it around and it's starting to bow just there. So I've only used this a little bit to move the diff and the engines, but then if you come up here you can see it bowed right out and actually ripped the RHS, which is quite thick RHS. If it'll focus, there you go. So it's quite thick RHS, just ripped it. So it started to bow like this, and it got worse and worse and worse, and then it ripped in half. This is the new spacer for the engine crane. So this is a reasonably thick wall tube, and that inside diameter is the same or very similar as the outside diameter on the Ram. So I'll drill a hole through this one, and I'll leave a bit more like meat here and drill a hole back here. Then I'll slide this one over, which is a thicker tube, which slides over the top of that thinner one quite nicely, and then I'll drill a hole through that as well, weld the two together, and then put the bolt through this and through the Ram and then through the other side of this and bolt the whole lot together. And then at the other end the same thing. So you can see that's quite a nice fit in there. So I just need to weld it together and drill some holes, and we'll get a new spacer, which is quite a lot thicker than the other one, and it shouldn't have as much wiggle room to then bow the material. So I'll do that another day, but that's what I've got for the plan. Make it a bit stronger, because I'm going to be using this spacer quite a lot because it's very handy. The engine crane's become a whole new tool with that spacer, with the extra height that it gives. So another thing I was working on the other day is the caster arm for the crown. So originally these bushes here, I've got some new ones for the crown, but they're quite thin and they actually splayed out over time, and then I had a whole lot of movement back and forth on this caster arm. So what I've done is, this is a S13 caster arm, bush. It's supposed to go inside a sleeve, but I've just flipped it around and put it on there. So then the hole that goes through there's that sleeve that goes over the threads and into the bush. I had to bore the hole out a little bit in the car to fit that sleeve through to then have these bushes on. So it seems to work quite well. It doesn't restrict me for movement other than the bump stop, which is on the caster arms, which I'll be getting rid of. And then I'd like to be able to tie this down nice and tight, and then I might put a turnbuckle in the caster arm so that I can adjust caster instead of adjusting it here, because that sucks. So that's all I've done with the crown. I've done that on both sides, but you can also see we moved it to the front of the shed. So the shed's still full of stuff at the moment, but we moved it out of the way, so it's now almost ready to go into the shed. So we'll get to that in another day or two. So the other stuff I've been working on is I've gotten that trans mount from Garage 7 that I was saying about. So we got an original Toyota one, which was cheaper than all the eBay ones. So that's awesome. And I've got front wheel bearings for the Chev, the C30. So these will go with the new hubs. So I got those from Garage 7 as well, because they're champions. And then this is the new hub that I got when we were in Melbourne. So as you can see, it is huge compared to the original. So these actually come with the race installed, which is good on front and back. So I don't need those. So I just got the bearings and the seals. So when I get time, I'll swap this front end over and make it a dual rear wheel front end. I'm also waiting for the wheel nuts to go on these hubs with the washers to hold the Alcoas onto these, and also onto the dual rear wheel rear end, as the Alcoas are stacked. So you need the correct wheel nuts, otherwise you're going to have a bad time. Really mint, Tim. Really mint.
Alright, Tim Rumsey coming up in the little skyline, powered by the RB30 up against Cole Ferguson. On board Mitsubishi Evo out in the 1463 on board Andrew Winchester. Look at that. Steering coming up.
That's a better burnout, Tim. That's a better burnout.
And 12.40 at 109. Really little skyline down here, about a fair few runs, and that's the distance skyline on Tim. Tim Rumsey with Cole Ferguson from Mitsubishi Evo. I'm pretty sure they had a run earlier on, and the Mitsubishi whipped him and showed him a short way home. So,
Yes, Tim. Oh, heaps better time.
Much better. 12.07 at 116 for winning time. So he would have said to his brother, I'm going to melt the tyres and see if I can make it hook up. He hasn't got the hook up anymore, and brakes and tracks are down here lane 1. The S series, the quickest run, 11.06.